Ousted CNN boss Jeff Zucker, who turned the once politically neutral network of CNN into a leftist Trump-hating machine, well, he's up to something quite sinister, it seems. Zucker is trying now to take over conservative British newspaper The Telegraph, trying to buy a conservative paper as the left tries desperately to control the narrative and brainwash the masses. Zucker's Abu Dhabi-backed group Redbird IMI recently agreed to pay $750 million to the Telegraph's owners, the Barclay family, to help repay their massive debt. But Zucker's rival bidders and members of British Parliament are slamming this potential deal as a threat to press freedom and a threat to national interests in the country. In the Financial Times, Zucker accused his critics of mudslinging while promising to preserve the newspaper's editorial independence. Our White House correspondent James Rosen has more.
Nearly a year after Jeff Zucker was fired as president of CNN over an intimate relationship with a colleague, one in a series of upheavals at the network, the longtime TV executive is poised to acquire two British media properties, both conservative in editorial perspective and now in receivership. The Telegraph once employed Boris Johnson, the former UK Foreign Secretary and Prime Minister, and The Spectator magazine was recently described by the New York Times as one of Britain's more prestigious outlets. Writer and editor Jacob Heilbrunn, a contributor to the American version of The Spectator, welcomed news of the prospective deal.
I doubt that the editorial line of any of the properties that he wants to acquire would substantially change.
Zucker's vehicle is Redbird IMI, a venture firm he's founded with backing from investors in the United Arab Emirates. While Redbird has said the Emiratis would be passive investors, the proposed $1.4 billion acquisition has stirred alarm in the UK, where a government probe may review it.
President Trump's allies in the media have spent almost a year.
Stateside, Zucker is seen as having jump-started CNN ratings, but the left blamed Zucker for enabling the rise of Donald Trump with the provision of generous airtime when he was a candidate, while the right saw Zucker pushing CNN's coverage to the left.
I mean, obviously, this is a very transitional time for media. I mean, obviously, every legacy media company for sure, but even many of the newer companies are facing challenges.
Redbird IMI faces a number of hurdles before a sale can be concluded. The uncertain electoral future of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and questions about the involvement of Gulf state interests could spark regulatory action that might empower one of the 18 or so other potential buyers who have their eyes on the properties. In Washington, James Rosen, Newsmax.
All right, so this is a bit of an interesting topic here. You've got Jeff Zucker jumping back into the media game, at least attempting to at this point. I want to bring in Hillary Fordwich with more on this. Hillary, good to have you back on. It's kind of a hometown paper for you. What do you think? What do you think Jeff Zucker is up to here?
Well, great to be back with you again, Rob. And your coverage there was actually totally accurate. What he's up to is taking over what has been referred to as a great British institution. Colloquially, it's known as the Tory graph, not the Telegraph. Tory being, of course, for Americans, not the Republican Party, but the Conservative Party is known as Tories in the UK. So yes, the publication of the Conservative Party. And what he's up to here is probably what he wanted to do and what he did at CNN was he took CNN from the days when we all probably remember that when the Gulf War broke out, CNN was somewhat editorially believable. It was the news of the nation. And then it certainly obviously went extremely political and started sort of the Trump derangement syndrome and really lost its credibility in terms of sort of a national network. And this is the fear in the UK. And actually that reporter just mentioned that MPs have been obviously up in arms about this. The cultural minister, Lucy Fraser, has actually interjected now and has sent a letter to these investors because there is huge concern that no longer would the Daily Telegraph be a great British institution, that it would become biased and dumbed down.
The agenda is a bit unnerving. You know, he's going to England. He's trying to get this newspaper that's generally conservative. He's claiming that he doesn't want to touch the editorial on it, which I think probably is a lie. I don't think this guy generally, cares much for conservative viewpoints at all. I don't think he wants to hear it. What will that do? Tell us a little bit about the power. Is the Telegraph, what is that akin to here in the United States? Is that like the New York Post? Is that similar in power and in reach?
Yes, although the New York Post, I would say, is somewhat a little bit more, what would be the word for it?
Salacious? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say sensation sells, and that's sort of the New York Post. But in terms of credibility, I absolutely would advocate to our viewers that the Daily Telegraph is something that's believable, solid reporting, and it's not a tabloid, in meaning it's not into sensation and scandal. What you will find from the Daily Telegraph is extremely accurate reporting, and you'll get a viewpoint there that you won't in other major sort of UK outlets that have all now become, as we have in the US, the preaching of the woke mob. Believable, and Newsmax viewers would really enjoy it, I think.
I just wonder, I'm trying to figure out whether or not there's an angle there. Do you think it would hurt? Does it hurt the politics in your country? Would it affect, is it enough to start affecting elections? Would it mean that the conservative voice doesn't have a reach?
Well, I just want to mention also that my country's American. I'm an British American.
Your former country. Okay.
I'm an American. Yeah. But it certainly, you're totally correct. It will definitely affect politics. And of course, there are those who are saying, no, he can retain independent view and editorial independence. I highly doubt it, given what he did at CNN. You have to judge people by their track record. That's what's at stake here, a great British institution.
I want to switch. I want to talk about something real quick. Conservative Prime Minister there, Rishi Sunak, just fired Suella Braverman for speaking out against pro-Hamas rallies in the country. I thought that was a really interesting move. I wanted to know what your thoughts on your Prime Minister are. He says he's a conservative.
Well, he doesn't have very conservative policies, I must say. He's viewed actually sort of as an elite globalist. But with regard to Suella Braverman, so that our audience knows, she is an immigrant who totally made her way. And sort of like in America, with a land of, you can make it if you work hard. That's what her family did. She's a descendant of immigrants, and she was very much against, just as we have in the US, the sort of invasion on the southern border. She was against this. And what she said was that the Metropolitan Police were biased in terms of allowing these protests that were pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian. For our audience, there are 14 times more Palestinians than Jewish people in London, and they were being overwhelmed with these protests. And she stood up for free speech and against anti-Semitism. And of course, she was fired. Yes.
Something else. Hillary Fordwich, good to have you on. Good to see you as always. Thank you.
Yes, pleasure.